It's the podcast about what's new and awesome in 3D printing for gamers. I'm your host, Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param, and I'm joined by...
Kristen Sowards, also known as Lost Spheres.
And the topic of today, or at least the lead story, we have a few things we want to talk about today, but the lead story is with the recent news that MyMiniFactory has acquired OnlyGames.co, and no, that is not a very, very nerdy OnlyFans.
Sorry.
Are they becoming the Disney of 3D printing? And is that a good or bad thing? We'll be talking about that after the banter. But before we jump right into that, Kristen, how's your 3D printing week been going?
Today, geez. This weekend was a really good reminder of like why passion projects matter. Like I had been slogging through, like I know I need my big celestial army. I want my big celestial army. It's cool. I did a bunch of demons, chaos proxies, whatever you want to call them. I did that before, and I was like, okay, the angel stuff's really cool, but like it was definitely something I was doing because I felt like I need for symmetry, and it was very like intentional. And last second, one of my players, Vanessa, had mentioned how much she enjoyed kind of a couple run-ins with this gang in my multiversal city setting, and they're called the Powder Cats, and they have like super like garish weird outfits and kind of not quite carnival, but like big puffy neon boas.
I know where this is going. You asked me to help you with this.
Yes, and I ended up just kind of last second, I mean really last second, going through a ton of Patreons, ton of stuff on MyMiniFactory, and putting together kind of this like crazy weird ensemble of high character roguish gang minis. And then I got Green Stuff World's fluorescent line stuff and just went nuts with an airbrush. And it was not it was not a technical masterpiece, but it was like it did kind of evoke this crazy colorful thing with all these high personality minis. Actually, I got a bunch of stuff from Twin Goddess, who I think is going to be on soon.
Yes, Twin Goddess will be on our next episode.
Yeah, Twin Goddess, Heroes Infinite had a kind of a Rogue Guild set and an Alice in Wonderland set, and I just kind of like mishmashed all the stuff, and then just did that simple trick of using the same base on everything, and they all suddenly like were members of the same gang, and it was really cool, super colorful, and it was a nostalgia bomb because these baddies had been kind of like a recurring thing back in the day, and something about beating up the Powder Cats in Hyraten is like a City of Seven Serifs staple now, and it really was fun. I also did some very unusual builds. Heroes Infinite had these crazy portal mages that they have they're jumping out of portals and looks really like evocative. And so I did a whole bunch of teleport shenanigans, and I used a bunch of old like third party content, some stuff from Scott Gladstein's Little Red Goblin game. He did a kind of a cool dimensional portal manipulating battle class and a couple others. And it was just a very unusual encounter, like throwing the healer into another alley while they were fighting and, breaking lines of effect. And it was just neat. It looked visually striking, and just was the kind of that reminder that like, the ability to just pivot so quickly with 3D printing and make like this thing that didn't exist 48 hours before my game, wasn't a twinkle in my eye. One comment from a player and suddenly it was go time, and got that out, and still managed to squeeze in enough time and print to get some fairies for my friend's Mother's Day present for her mom. So like so cool that I got all that done in like 48 hours and just pumped, like wow, I forget that you can do so much so fast. Right. How about you?
And this is one of the extremely, like, I think this might be secretly for most people the best reason to get a 3D printer for your gaming is the selection. We talked about it in our first episode, like the top reasons to have a 3D printer, but selection. And like, unless you happen to like live in downtown London or one of the places where like multiple miniature companies are congregated within like a few hours drive of each other, you're not likely, or you're walking through Gen Con or Adepticon at the moment, you're not likely going to be able to just say, hey, I want a whole dozen different dapper magical rogues. How am I going to get this together? Very recently, the YouTube show Eons of Battle talked about they wanted a very carnival style witch for their warband, and was bragging about how awesome Adepticon was because they were able to walk down the aisle of Adepticon and find just the right mini they need. That is every given Monday for a 3D printing fan. You can just go to MyMiniFactory and just browse to your cart's content and find just all sorts of wonderful awesomeness, and have it, like you said, you had 48 hours to get all this done for your game. First, good on you for managing to do the printing and painting in 48 hours to get a crew like that together. But if I wanted to do that trick before I got my 3D printer, I would be having to rely on mail order stuff, and especially with the way things are now, but even before they were the way things are now, when I'm talking about ordering specialty stuff, it's being shipped from overseas, and like it would be a week minimum before I got all that stuff in order to start the work of converting that and done. It would not have been able to. Vanessa, you're probably referring to Vanessa Hoskins, right?
I'm actually not, but Vanessa Hoskins is amazing. But no, my friend Vanessa Moon.
Okay, and they just spout it off in 1 minute, and you're ready for like the next game that same week. Is just craziness that's only possible because in a lot of ways we've become our own toy stores and toy manufacturers.
Yeah, I have like 6 or 7, like I kind of an embarrassment of riches of gaming stores like really close to my house. And even hitting every single one of them, I couldn't have met that variety and that, you know, spice, that flair. I couldn't have done it. And I certainly couldn't have made them, you know, all on bases together without a bunch of, you know, hack jobs. Probably would have been cutting nulzers off their bases and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And like that alone would have taken me more time. Just the shopping and the rebasing, it was nuts. But yeah,
wow. I have no idea what the very loud sound outside was, but let's just hope it's not the return of Gentle Ben.
The good thing is your noise canceling took it out because I didn't hear a dang thing.
Oh, I'm fantastically glad about that. Let's see here. Alex has a comment here that Nottingham is home to GW and Warlord Games, not so much London, though. I think we're down to 3 official GW stores in London, maybe half a dozen FLGSs that stock their minis. Awesome for the info, Alex.
Wow, that's crazy. I have more here in Salt Lake.
I kind of just like all the British YouTubers that talk about how awesome mini shopping is. I kind of just imagined that living anywhere in England was just like having cast plastic on tap straight into the vein or something.
Right. Like it was the Shire, a pub, and then a whole bunch of like GW stores.
Right. Wow. Okay. Good to know, Alex. Thanks. So like I live in like the rear end of nowhere. To give you some context of where I live in Kentucky, the Hatfield McCoy feud happened here, which is maybe the only reason we have ever had Kevin Costner come visit.
Nice.
So my week in 3D printing has been enjoying how amazing wash and cure machines are, because especially when you get one that matches your printer. Now, I had a wash and cure machine. I already bragged about the Mercury 2 Plus, which was great. It was wonderful. It was designed for the Mars 3.
But I'm hearing past tense here was.
Yeah, I mean it's currently boxed up. Because after using it a bunch, I decided to bump it up and get the Mercury X bundle, which is their bigger wash and cure machine, dedicated to not dedicated, but big enough to hold the Saturn's build plate. And so I decided, sure, let's fill it all the way up and actually try that out and see if it's any more convenient than just throwing things in the basket. Oh my God, it makes my life so much better. So big differences here. Dedicated wash machine, dedicated cure machine. They are 2 separate devices. You're not swapping buckets and plates. That's great. If you want to do the smaller ones, it is worth probably buying 2 of the smaller ones and dedicating one to one and one to the other, as easy as that alone. But being able to just take the Saturn plate off my printer, put it directly into the wash machine without ever touching it or pulling minis off the plate yet.
Does it just have another peg or something that it sits on, or how does that work?
It's kind of like a shelf that the plate just sits on, and like I don't even have to take the basket out. I've got the basket loaded in there, it just sits there, and the plate of the Saturn sits between the handles of that. and then boom, you hit go. It cleans it while it's still on the plate. My gloves have not touched wet resin yet. And then I pull it out, give it a shake, and it has washed my plate at the same time that it washed my minis.
That would be
So I
convenient.
still have not touched wet resin yet. And so it makes everything cleaner and neater. And all the stuff we talked about a couple of episodes back about what it takes to be mainstream. This is the journey to mainstream, I think, for at least for liquid resin printing. We talked about that the Formlab stuff had a system kind of like this. Like the only thing that would be better is if this was just built into the Saturn itself.
Right.
But so it's just you take the build plate off, you're just touching the screw handle of the build plate, you're not touching any of the models or the wet resin. Goes into the cure machine. The cure machine washes off all the wet resin. You pull it out, you've got cleaned prints that just need to be hardened and their supports removed. That's when you pop them off the build plate, or I have a flex plate, so I pop the flex plate off, twist it, my models fall onto my cleaning mat, put the flex plate back on, put it back on my printer, it's good to go. I use the hot water trick to pull the resins off, but Uncle Jesse over in his channel is using a heat gun, so I'm thinking about trying a heat gun.
Interesting.
And so the models don't get wet, and then put them into the cure station, and you can wet cure them in the cure station too. But I've not done that yet with this new cure station because I wanted to see how much I could fit on its rotator plate.
Sure.
A full Saturn plate with like 40 infantry models all fit onto that rotator plate without covering each other.
Oh yeah, I have to kind of pile them up and then like shift them and do another in my little guy, my little baby Mercury.
It got a little tight when I also put the bases on.
Yeah. That'll do it.
And the Mercury X, it's got a clear plate that's levitated up, and it has a bar of UV under the plate to cure the bottoms, so you don't even have to worry about like
that was something.
One moment, y'all. Talk, Kristen.
Yeah. It's very actually similar to my little Mercury guy. Has a similar transparent rotator plate, but mine's solar powered by refraction from the top LEDs, and then it spins. And I hope that wasn't like a tornado hitting your house.
It wasn't, I don't think. I mean, it's been a few years since my last tornado that I've been in, but let's kind of hope this one is all right. But no, the wind blew so hard it yanked my studio door open. So I had to go lock it.
That sounds vaguely tornado-ish. I'm worried for you.
It's okay.
All right.
Yeah, but new Mercury X washing cure station makes life so much easier. I love it. I love my little toy.
And I think that's something that's just worth commenting on. There is always refinement, I've been doing this now, since August last year. So I don't know, not a year, but getting close, and 9 months. And I didn't realize that, I could use settings to bevel the raft for the resin prints the same way you do with an FDM printer. And it's just dumb. It's like a tiny miss, but such a huge difference. I'm actually now having little problems with adhesion, but like not that big a deal, especially now that I'm back to popping off. Because when I added Tenacious, again, refinement, right? So things don't break as much.
You have to cure a little longer with Tenacious.
Yeah. Well, I've noticed just that my raft was like impenetrable. I literally had to chisel it off and without doing that lip. But now that I started doing that lip, it's actually starting to peel even by the end of the print, which is, I probably need to adjust it back a little bit, but then the constant nuancing and things like that. And I finally got a flex plate. I just got it in. But I don't want to put it on until I have a replacement, because I am the guy who will destroy his like base plate trying to do the modification. So I was like, okay, get another build plate, because it wouldn't be bad to have one anyway. I'm not like, I was in a forum the other day and someone said, oh, I don't ever replace my FAP. I just get a new tank. And I'm like, holy crap. Like, what world do you live in? But
that was me with my first Mars, because I was like, I hate changing FEPs, and it's only $10 more to get a whole tank. Let's do the tank.
At least the Saturn's a little enough cost prohibitive tank to just slow that decision down for me. But he was like, he had an A-cubic the larger one in Mono X, I think, and was buying a whole new tank. I'm like, that's
wow, at like 30, 40
it.
bucks a
$40
top.
or something like, yeah. I'm just like,
Yikes.
but yeah, I don't know. Anyway, back to just the refinement stuff. Tiny things add up so much, and I'm super excited to get that flex plate on there because I don't necessarily want to touch resin ever again if I can help it either, but I'm not there yet.
So I think it's time we transition over to our topic. And it began, like I said at the intro, we got a letter this week from MyMiniFactory. Probably very many of you did get the same letter.
I got it several times.
Oh, wow. Their email system is a little bit funky sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah. Announcing that MyMiniFactory has acquired OnlyGames.co. And many of you are probably asking, what is an OnlyGames.co? I mean, maybe some of you have done it. If you've worked with certain creators, they have already been using this service. But at first glance, they look like, your average merchant license superstore. But that's not what they are. They are a storefront for many creators, for STL creators or many artists to open up a store like they do on MyMiniFactory, but instead of selling files, OnlyGames.co is a printing service. Yep. So they will print the models and ship them when you order from them, and the files are provided from the artist. But OnlyGames.co doesn't go get one of the merchant licenses like you see on Etsy and other stores that operate like this. The artist goes to OnlyGames and opens up an account, and there are several we mentioned one-page rules on this show a lot. Disclaimer: I've done work for them and got paid by them,
so yeah. I will disclaim that as well.
But the only place to get official one-page rules printed minis is through OnlyGames.co. They don't offer a merchant's license. A lot of companies don't offer merchant's licenses. And
a lot of them have limited numbers of merchant licenses as well. So.
Yeah. So when you are buying something from OnlyGames.co, it's a storefront that the creators themselves have created. You're buying from one-page rules. You're buying from
the licensing partnership, basically.
Yeah. And they get a cut of every sale that's done there. And I thought this was interesting because at this point, MyMiniFactory is already the largest store for buying mini files a la carte. And the other place the other biggest place would be Patreon. And they now have their own Patreon competition with Tribes. I kind of am learning to like Tribes more than Patreon in a lot of cases, especially as Tribes.
One thing that will kick it over. I didn't hear that one either. You all right?
The whole building shook on that one, gang. What is the one thing you want from Tribes, by the way?
I want Tribes to have a link to asset by artist, so that if you've already bought it in a storefront or a Patreon download, it all comes up together.
I have told them this so many times.
I can't say how much that would 100% kick me over at this point. I mean, there are artists that do prefer working with Patreon. There are artists that prefer working with Tribes. And actually, this is one of the questions I ask people a lot, and like what they do. And you can tell, like, that like this artist, their discount code goes out on Patreon 2 weeks before it shows up on their Tribe, and like I have a lot of these people that I check both just because I'm always bargain hunting and, dropping and adding, dropping and whatever. But yeah, it is clear that there are people. I understand usability, like it's like drive-through RPG. It's not it's a better tool set for the customer, right? But I understand that it's a little more work on the artist, right? And they have less control sometimes of things. And so I think you can see preferences for people, but there are people who definitely seems to prefer Tribes, who only have Tribes. I also know people who still only have Patreons. And so it's kind of definitely your mode of operating. Like, yeah, I could get into being a third-party publisher myself, but you can imagine a bunch of different reasons why you would do that, depending on cut or the difficulty. Certain places make it very difficult to set up your new product. and those things are all back engine stuff that the consumer doesn't see. And so
Right.
the user experience of Tribes is improving to the point where like it's kind of becoming my go-to to add stuff now, because it's just an easier experience and it's aggregating everything.
I don't, most of my stuff is still on Patreon, mainly because of loyalty reward concerns. Or I've got really sweet deals because I'm in some of the early patron stuff
I
that
do
I'm not
have,
wanting to give up.
yes, a bunch of those. My Arcvillain $9 one will never leave my cold dead hand.
But I very recently, when not Arcvillain, but Artisan Guilds, like they just moved to Tribes and they offered codes to switch, and I was like, sure, I'll switch you over to Tribes. And so so now my Artisan Guilds one, my oldest running small Patreon account is a Tribes account.
Did
And
they incentivize that? Was there an extra mini or anything? I'm just curious.
Nope.
Just wanted to do it.
When it was asked, they were like, we don't care which one you all choose to go with. It's your preference. But they did give me a code that made it a free changeover because it happened in the middle of a month. And yeah, so, and they also migrated over my loyalty reward so that it would also count. So that was great.
I had a bad experience with that initially, so I'm glad that got smoother for you, because there's a couple of them where I've got double billed and I had to get people to like go back and give me credit or
right,
you know, whatever, which was clunky for them for sure.
Right.
So I'm glad that was nice transition.
Yeah, but to bring us back to topic, they've got a Patreon competition. They're already the best place, not the best place, but the biggest place, probably the best place too. But with outside of a judgment call here, they're already the biggest a la carte store. They're likely your fulfillment is done through them. You're already, even if you are on Patreon a lot, you're going to MyMiniFactory every month to get your models or to get past models, unless you're downloading them straight from Patreon every month. Though I will tell you, when I had got to stop worrying about whether or not I got my files on time each month, was the best time ever.
Yeah, that's a big plus.
I only have one company left that I have to do it manually, and if they weren't so good, I would have dropped them by now because of it. Like that is a deal breaker for me. You would have to be amazing at making something I desperately want for me.
You're gonna name names. Who is it?
Not saying it. Not saying it.
All right.
Not saying it.
I don't, I mean, like, I have to admit, like, I really like Heroes Infinite. And I do not like going to private sites like Loot or Heroes Infinite, but you know, they overcome it with piles and piles of offerings. So I acquiesce. But yeah,
I'm not sure I quite understand what Alex is saying. I don't know who James Workshop is or why they would send cease and desist orders. But now MyMiniFactory also owns a company that has what I've seen is the largest selection of buyable prints of minis in one place. And I can already see the very near future, or as a possibility, where I'm browsing a model on MyMiniFactory and I can buy the STL or buy a physical version.
Yeah.
And if I'm a mini printer with a merchant license, I'm nervous about this move.
Yeah.
I know that Etsy has a lot of stuff going on right now that already made that a not so great experience for people using it, but it was basically like currently the place you go to look for prints, besides a few specialty stores that have certain licenses. And this can't mean that will grow. I mean, I think the honeymoon might be over for the boom of the mini printer as a business model.
I could see that definitely happening. I have a question. Do we know if it's like CeoCast or what the material is going to be? Is it resin? Is it?
I'm assuming they're just going to be resin prints because they're the same models they're offering that you can buy and print yourself. And CeoCast models, I know that I talked with Titans Forge about this at PAX Unplugged for quite a bit, and they were talking about how they had to reposition, repose, and resculpt some of the stuff because even though CeoCast is a wonderful way to make plastic molding with really good materials, really cheap and easy, it still is a two-piece mold. And there are poses that some of these models are in that would be impossible to do as a traditional mold.
Yeah, I figured that was the case, but I was curious, especially after everybody hyping up Rivenstone, which I cannot. I love Broken Anvil, but I cannot get excited about it because of the physical versus STL thing. I just can't do it.
It does seem to be an odd choice for them, but
Yeah.
they are definitely throwing it out there to with all the promotions and all the sponsorships. And I hear it is a very fun game to play. So
I have heard that. I have yet to get to demo it.
Right. They got good looking models.
They
I will
do.
say
They
that.
do. It's interesting that they're not stuff they've ever printed though. I would figure they would have like gone back into their Patreon backlog and done it, but it's all new stuff. So, anyway.
But the topic is MyMiniFactory is sort of encapsulating all aspects of 3D printing for games. In they're becoming very powerful in one place. And the comparison to Disney and their buy hungry acquisition phase is the fact that almost all of my 80s childhood is now owned by one company. And now my favorite new fandom is almost all controlled by one big company. Is interesting. Now, no, I don't want to disparage MyMiniFactory at all, but this is definitely a situation where there's one very powerful player in the market. Like, what are the competitions for MyMiniFactory? There's Colts. Colts is the other probably the biggest other place that you can sell printed minis, though that mostly seems to be occupied by the 40K, very close, almost identical as a copy files in the world.
Well, and the user experience. You know, that's one of the things I could talk about all
Colts
day.
is a rough
It is
browse.
not
Like
great.
if you're downloading a file from Colts, you even if it's one you paid money for, you can't browse their website at the same time. They limit you to one download connection to their website at a time.
Right.
So if you're downloading a file, you can't browse for other files. You can't download more than one file. You can't do anything. You was like, I'm going to go visit other websites. Ironically, this leads to me going to MyMiniFactory and buying stuff there at the same time that I would have bought more stuff from Colts. Like, ooh, that's really cool sci-fi jet bikes. I could use those for my project. Well, for the next 10 minutes, I'm not doing anything but downloading these. So let me go see what MyMiniFactory has for my project.
Right.
It's a bad time. Thingiverse, you can't sell. You can't sell things on Thingiverse.
Well, and Thingiverse, and this is kind of leaning into something else, but Thingiverse also has a really interesting search engine. Like I just get the weirdest stuff on the same searches, and I think maybe it's because MyMiniFactory kind of leans heavily into the mini, like the gaming community, but like the search results are just so much better. I mean, they're still not perfect. Don't get me wrong, but they just seem to be so much more relevant to what I want. So
yeah. Plus, Thingiverse is like been bought and sold a bunch, and they're becoming a very buggy website, and it doesn't seem to be that the people running it are taking very good care of it at this point, even though I use it fairly frequently and host files on there. If you look up Param on Thingiverse, you'll find like a whole bunch of the files I've made for Kings of War and other games to support those. But if an alternative with Thingiverse is rising up called Printables, and it's getting better and bigger, and that is mostly focused not on the gaming elements. So the gaming elements are there, but it's like, I need a potted plant holder, or I need an adapter for my camera, or really cool things. Paint racks, so many printable paint racks.
I
That's what Printables
molding for my light switch. I'm gonna go there, but not
yeah. It's a great website, and if you got a 3D printer, there are other. Believe it or not, your 3D printer is capable of doing things besides printing more minis. You can print like I designed and printed an adapter for my dad's GoPro from like, hey, I need this adapter, to 4 hours later, here's the adapter, Dad. I designed it myself.
Right. That is a great question Alex just put up. I don't know how only games, you've got me thinking OnlyFans now in my head. Great. Only games is how are they subcontracting? I think
read the question out loud.
Will MyMiniFactory be printing the minis themselves or subcontracting orders to 3D home 3D printer owners? And I don't know. I don't know how Only Games
there's
works
some clues to this.
Okay, let's hear it.
Only Games first, it existed before MyMiniFactory bought it. Like One Page
Yep.
Rules is where I found out about it because that's where they are doing all their printing.
Arc
Of
Villain
like
too,
the
I think,
list of
did it.
companies, yeah. Arc Villains, Bestiarium, Printed Obsessions, Nick's Hatchery, Fleshcraft Studio, Signum Workshop, Mr. Marduk. It's a
It sounds like my
gigantic
subscription list.
list. It's almost everyone. Like I don't see, like I'm afraid to call it out. Like I don't see Artisan Guild on here, but if they were on here and I missed it, I wouldn't be surprised. Like Cobra Mode is on here. Let's see. Signum Workshop, Table Hammer, Dragon's Trapper Lodge, The Printing Goes Ever Onwards. Like almost everybody's here. Papsicle, Modifius is on here. They print their own stuff. They have
Right.
molding and machinery work, but they're on here. Adventurers Guild's on here. Those were one of my first favorite minis. Yeah. So there's tons and tons of people on here, and they talk about the quality of their printers, that it is like the best printers doing it and experienced and all this jazz. That strongly hints to me that they have their own printers and they are doing this. So it's not so much that MyMiniFactory, it's this new company MyMiniFactory bought. So far, they have not merged those two beasts into one chimera. I expect that probably will happen, but I have no official word on that or against that. It's but right now it is a separate website with that's being run by separate people. But I kind of expect they will merge. But it does look like they have their own printers. They're printing the minis themselves and then shipping them out. They're not subcontracting with small home printers. And also, that would not be a model that, like, letting anybody sign up to print models for them. Like, let's be honest, there's already one of the biggest problems with buying 3D printed minis on Etsy are occasionally you get someone who did it badly, and then you get a mini that's like full of liquid resin or sticky, and that's dangerous and that's bad.
Yeah.
And that's really bad. And because it's anybody with a merchant license, and a lot of people, let's face it, a lot of people that didn't bother getting the merchant license, because you can find stuff from Loot Studios on Etsy. Loot Studios does not offer a merchant license at all. Definitely nobody on Etsy got one. So there are people that are printing without licenses. And so the quality control there doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had generally good experiences the few times I've ordered sculpted stuff, but I mean, I get it. Like I can see a lot of reasons why there would be problems, especially someone who's getting super enthusiastic and just getting their operation scaled up to do that could make some bad choices. So,
and they only games, they don't only sell printed minis. That does appear to be the lion's share of what they are advertising that they do, but they also sell paint brushes, paints, basing material, acrylic inks, blank bases that are obviously not 3D printed, things like that. So they also do seem to have like actual just supplies and stuff that you would need to make this stuff. I'm not seeing any product that is like physical minis that only ever existed as physical. There's no Reaper Bones on here that I'm able to find. Yeah, but they do also sell other things, which is smart, because hey, if I'm often going to need paintbrushes, and if I'm trust a service. And even then, my experience with buying printed minis off Etsy is mostly positive, but it's always been with people I've had dealt with before in other things, like War Chest Creations. I've bought several things printed from them, but they are also my MDF dude. Like they did a lot of custom MDF cuts pieces for me, like hundreds and hundreds of bases with the exact size magnet holes I need in them. That's always handy. Movement trays at the exact dimensions I need them, and I love working one-on-one with people on Etsy like that. And it's also fun because then you can have a back and forth conversation with them. It's like, hey, I need a whole bunch of vampire knights, but I don't want any of the ones with this head in the sculpt because he looks silly. Can you just print me extras of these 3 sculpts? you can have those conversations. Or, hey, I need those at
Right.
90% scale because I'm playing Kings of War and I need them to fit on these 100 by 50 bases, not the giant AOS bases. And they'll
Yeah.
do that.
And you haven't ever got anything from
No,
onlygames.co?
never, because I have my own printers, so I don't
Right,
usually
right, and
buy.
yeah, I wouldn't either,
Yeah,
so
like mostly when I was doing that, it was like I like cavalry, because cavalry is annoying to print, especially when I only had a Mars,
yeah.
because horses are big, and giant models. So before I got my Saturn, like I had them print up like a big old giant Minotaur, which was like on a 4-inch base. So it was a big old boy Minotaur.
Yeah. That can be a drag to print all the pieces and put it together for sure.
Yeah. So is this a good thing for the industry or a bad thing? Like from a customer's perspective, what do we feel about this?
There's the question right there, I think,
Mhm.
because for the customer, I think it's
Mhm.
going to be mostly wins short term, right?
Right.
And that's the thing. Like, it's going to be integrated shopping. It's going to be integrated fulfillment. It's going to be, hopefully cross-referenced better. I would really like the artist thing, but anyway, that's all going to be gain as a customer, and I'm going to love it in my day-to-day shopping, especially if it is something really wonky and I can't do it, or if they offer maybe a translucent color that's really rare. I don't know what they're going to do,
Right.
but
what are the options? Like here, let me click the Fallout Girl. What are my? Do I get to pick the resin color?
I don't know.
I don't see it.
But these things sometimes in the back end do weird things in the industry. And I think you've already mentioned probably the first casualty we'll see is a lot of people who are small shop fulfillment. I don't know. Are they only servicing US? Do we know? Or are they servicing multiple hubs?
I don't know that information. They by their currencies, it looks like it's US, Europe, and Australia is
Okay. So they're
so they're
already international.
so they
Then.
accept pounds, euro, Australian dollars, US dollars, and kroners.
Huh.
Oh, interesting. So we'll address that after this topic, Alex,
Okay.
and bring it up. But yeah, throw the link in chat for sure.
Yeah, thanks for getting a link for us. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So yeah,
I think it could be really good short term, but I worry long term.
Right. I mean, for me, it means, and for the artist, I think this is still most like if I'm a mini artist, if I'm if I'm Printed Obsession, if I'm Rocket Pig Games, I think this is also still mostly positive, because instead of the merchant licenses, which is like usually like $30 to $50 a month from a person that they're going to pay you for the right to print and sell models, they're getting a cut of every model, and I don't know how big that cut is.
And I think that's a huge thing. Like, having a third-party distribution for my digital products and PDFs and stuff. Like, there are places that do higher percentage, say, than drive-through, but drive-through is so big, it is still constantly my biggest source of revenue. So like that probably would be the same from MyMiniFactory, unless the percentage is terrible. And so I guess it depends on where that percentage is, whether or not somebody who's got the merchant license and has like a lot of them and gets good traction on it might lose if those merchant licenses start becoming less viable for people to keep up because their demand drops. I could see it going both ways, and it's probably going to be different per creator depending on their volume. But yeah, I could see it shutting down a few of those, and then that tier will become kind of obsolete.
Right. Yeah. And also the other point of view from the artist is like, if you go the one-page rules route, and I'm only bringing them up again because they're one I know uses only games exclusively, then you could be like, you just go to Etsy, and anybody that's selling your models, you send cease and desist and shutdowns and copyright claims and all that jazz. You go to eBay, and everybody there, you just hit the shut this down, unauthorized counterfeit thing. And it's not, well, do they have a license? Don't they have a license? Who has a license for this as a customer? It's like, am I buying from a source that's legit? If I'm buying from a source that's not, if they're on here, they're legit. Is an official approved source, and that confusion exists.
Yeah.
And you also notice that as long as they're producing quality product, they're not hurting your brand by selling somebody a toxic, sticky version of your product printed
Right.
poorly with half the supports hanging off of it. And I'm
Oh,
not saying that is most people on Etsy. I'm not saying that at all. I just know that those posts show up on Facebook, and it doesn't look good for
yeah.
the whole
More of the,
industry when that happens.
yeah, and it hurts, smaller creators
Mhm.
for sure, because
Right.
people get this
Right.
like, what am I gonna get? Like, I've seen
Right.
the same thing with resin dice, because that is just exploding right now, those free pour
Mhm.
dice. And there's so many cool things out there, but I've seen creators that get that rap, or work with another creator, and then they divide their studio into two new companies, and one of the new companies maybe isn't taking the same safety precautions, and you get
Mhm.
sketchy things happening. So,
Right.
and
Oh, it is a complicated topic, but at this but the industry's growing. Like, it can't be a whole bunch of us in our garages just slapping
forever,
stuff
yeah.
together forever. Like, if this is gonna become, like, a legitimate future of the industry, then things like this is what we're gonna see. We're gonna see consolidation. We're going to see lots of companies become a few bigger companies. What we haven't seen is consolidation on the artist side of things, and I think that's where it would start concerning me the most, because at this point, it's still the artist opening storefronts and getting a cut. It's Artisan Guild has a MyMiniFactory page. They are so Art. Let's do Art Villain because they actually have both. Art Villain has a MyMiniFactory page. They sell STL files there. They have a tribe there. You can get your subscription through there. They've opted into that. They get a cut. They get the majority of the money involved there. I don't know about this because there's production cost that's going to take I do not know what the cut is for this production cost, but then they opt into this. They are still the ones making the decisions, putting the items on there. There's not like MyMiniFactory didn't buy Artville. The MyMiniFactory didn't buy one page rules out and become like both the producer and everything. As long as we still have independent artists making awesome sculpts, I think the storefront stuff is inevitable, but doesn't hurt us too much.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I think
Mhm,
as long as the percentage is good, it'll be healthy for the
mhm,
artist community. In fact, I think we're
mhm,
still seeing divergent more, like
mhm,
where a Patreon gets bigger, they
mhm,
bring on more people or a tribe, whatever, and
mhm,
then those people get their skill set built up, and then they break off and do their own tribe or Patreon. And like we're still
mhm,
seeing that kind of mitosis phase for the artist, which I think is great.
mhm.
And at least currently, it seems to be bearing it out, because I think there's so many enthusiasts who probably overbuy. but
Yeah, I really should not buy as many files as I do because I print nowhere near as many as I buy. My collection's growing so fast, I don't know what's in it.
yeah,
I'm having to constantly go and rebrowse the
yeah.
Patreons just to see what I bought because I didn't know.
I had a fascinating experience the other day. I was in a Patreon chat, and I'm not going to say necessarily who, because I don't want people to feel bad, but um, this Patreon's very prolific, and uh, huge community. And they were asking about their game and who wanted to play their game, and maybe test out some new content. And in the chat, out of like the 30 or 40 people in that chat room, two of them played. The rest of them
Oh,
just bought the stuff and had never got to play. And
mm,
and then, of those people who'd never played the game and were just buying the minis to have the minis, there were four people that didn't even have printers yet.
wow.
And they were buying, dozens. And I get it, like, be prepared, right? And I was. I
Mhm,
think I think I knew I was gonna pull the trigger. So I think about 3 months before I got my printer, I was doing that.
mhm,
But there are people who are
yeah.
in dozens of
There's not
Patreons,
just
and
people, a lot of our audience, we get messages and fan comments from people who watch our show and
Mhm.
don't have printers yet, and I can see that, and yeah, if there's an amazing set, or I'm gonna buy it now at $10 so that I'm not
Right.
paying $80 for it
Years
later.
later, yeah, amen,
Mhm,
right? I
mhm,
get it. But I guess sometimes everybody in the industry loses track of how many people are, not even getting to that end point, right?
mhm,
And it'll be interesting to see, how much this gets used. I hope it gets used really well, and it's very productive for the artists, and that it results in more proliferation and more content, because yay, more is more. But I hope it doesn't go the other way, especially hitting the merchant tiers in a way that hurts
Right.
the end artist at the at the end of the day.
Right.
So
And I've talked with the leadership of MyMiniFactory a couple of times and seen what they've done. And so far, I've got no reason to distrust their motives or think anything ill of them. The knee jerk reaction is just, hey, oh, there's a whole other market becoming one place. That's always a big red flag. But so far, they've done nothing to warrant any. Like, I'm kind of hoping they stay a Steam
yeah,
and don't become like an eBay
right.
is my comparison here. Both of those are prolific near monopoly storefronts, and one of them has a reputation of being pretty awesome and lenient and cool, and the other one has a reputation of you change the rules again and now it really sucks to use your products.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I would say the same thing in the RPG space. That definitely, I love working with
Mhm.
drive through because it's just so easy and
Mhm.
it's high traffic. Like, why wouldn't I? You know?
Right. Yeah. And if we see the space continue to grow, which we hope it does, we hope more people get printers, more people get involved in this, then it's probably a matter of time before like a robust competitor shows up. When does the Epic Games show up to compete against the Steam? You know, when do
Mhm.
we get the big competition to like a challenger appears to challenge MyMiniFactory? There's been a few places that have shown up. I haven't, I don't use those yet.
Yeah.
But I want to see something with at least the quality of MyMiniFactory. And MyMiniFactory ain't perfect. Their library needs serious work. Y'all's library is broken, and it needs to
Organized
be
by
fixed.
artist,
I
please.
can't I can't filter or organize anything. And when I click the artist buttons, they don't actually work. I have to go into the drop downs.
Well, and I don't know if you run into this too, the download where it just downloads the first file from the purchase. Like
I
you in
haven't
the
run into
purchase
that.
screen, so you buy a cart of like, because I was doing
Mhm.
this weekend because I joined up with Twin Goddess and I was like, oh, I can go back and get some backlist stuff. Blah, 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 got a bunch of stuff.
Uh-huh.
But I also picked up some stuff from a couple other Patreon tribes, whatever, and went in. I'm like, oh, here's this bundle. It's a super good deal. I got it, and I try to download it, and it's just like bases, 25 millimeter downloads. But I go to the page, and it's the whole bundle. It has the whole thing, right? Like,
Hmm.
and I don't know why that happens just from that one download screen, but it happens a lot, a lot, a lot.
Yeah.
And I could see a
Oh.
customer who's not familiar with the storefront freaking out, thinking, I bought the entire Decimator army, and I just got bases. What the hell? They don't know to go to that next screen. So I think that's a UI thing that's not so great.
Well, if you've got any concerns or comments about MyMiniFactory, do drop it into the comment section or email us over at podcast@printergames.com. Now, Alex, longtime fan of the show, shows up to every single episode, has a point. Says, not sure if posting links is allowed, but there's a petition to save the last 1990s style Games Workshop store in the UK. It's in Milton Keynes and should be preserved for nostalgia's sake. I've heard of this. I kind of hope it gets preserved. So, absolutely, Alex, toss us the link and I'll get it into the description of this episode so people can find it. It I have fond memories of 90s era Games Workshop, and I'd still love like finding those old catalogs and browsing through them because that was part of my formative gamer years is seeing giant boards set up and it's like, oh, there exists a type of gaming where I can build like little cities and make my fantasy figures move around in them. How can I do this? And it was a big impetus for me getting as involved in role-playing games and Pathfinder and D&D as I eventually did get, and eventually moving into the wargaming space proper. And I still love a lot of my old 90s models, and I love people like Monstrous Encounters that are doing 3D sculpts in the 90s styles.
Mhm.
And those are great. Like, my undead has a whole troop of ghouls that are their styles. Like, ooh, these 90s looking ghouls are the best things ever.
Yeah, my 90s, I was actually working in LGS for 5 or 6 years back then, and, like, we made terrain for sale, and we also had, like, big, crazy free play boards where, like, I look at it now and I'm like, we were trusting people with just, like, probably hundreds, if not thousands of dollars of custom terrain, just let people play with it all the time, and it was in a back room, unsupervised, and I'm just like, "Ugh," like, the beauty of that just kind of reckless enthusiasm, I kind of miss it, but
Right.
it
I miss
definitely, yeah,
I miss the
definitely.
old Realms of Battle. Do you remember those? Like the big giant chunking the terrain they introduced in the aughts, where it was like whole hills and there were 6 packs of it and it came in a big old bag like the size of me.
Oh yeah, yeah, I do remember that. I
Mhm.
actually wasn't at an LGS at that point, but I do remember seeing those because like it was a nightmare to try to like hang off of racks, or at least the ones I saw, were kind of
Mhm.
clunky, but
Yeah. Alex, I think the link got filtered. If you could just toss it to me on Facebook, I'll grab it there. Um, but oh yeah, yeah, it's like they stopped producing that now, and I'm like, oh, sad, because now I've got like I'm an adult with expendable income. It's like I can now buy the big giant mountain thing, and it's kind of
mm,
impractical. Like
right.
uh, neoprene mats are kind of the best way to do this right now. So and then throw terrain on top of it, or go like full Geek Gaming Scenics and like plaster and woodworking and frames, but I'd never have a place to store that.
Yeah, I definitely got into foam core like stuff right before I got into 3D printing. And like I'm still kind of itching to like every time I like right in my eyesight right now, I have like a stack of dollar store foam core and then my hot wire
Yes.
cutters over there, and just like
Mhm.
the idea of just like building crazy stuff. Like I get torn because I can almost match speed for like FDM print because it's so slow. I can almost
Mhm.
build out something and have it done in the same time. Just a lot more of me doing a thing,
Right.
where, but again, you get custom results, which I clearly
Right.
am a fan of.
Right. Yeah.
But
Me
I have so
doing
many other things to paint.
yeah. I mean, I've done like the foam core hot wire cutter builds before and I love it. And like me building out
Mhm.
like a tavern that way is like, a weekend's worth of work and shavings all across the floor and paints and
There
my
is that.
my current favorite shirt now is not available because I have a big giant black spot that's never going to come out on it because black Mod Podge stains forever. Um,
Yes, I have
but
had that happen.
me working on that same thing with a 3D printer is me binge watching like 10 episodes of I'm a Villainous anime, and yeah, that's fantastic. My Next Life as a Villainous, All Routes Lead to Doom is a fantastic anime if you haven't checked it out.
I have not. I'm
All
just
right, everybody.
getting caught up for Legend of Shield. Right, the Rise of Shield Hero 2 is where I'm at right now.
Yes. All right. So, everyone, that's our episode for the week. If you have any questions, you can throw them into the comments or contact us at podcast@printyourgames.com. If you want to help the show out right now, share the episode with your friends, let other people know about this show. You can also leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify or Google Play or wherever you listen to this podcast. Or if you're watching us on the YouTubes, our small but loyal, loving YouTube audience, we love all of y'all. You can give us a like. You can hit that subscribe button. Heck, dropping a comment there helps us so much. It helps get the word out for the episode. So if you're doing that, awesome. If you're watching us on Facebook or Twitter, we have a loyal Twitter audience that watches us on Twitter. You all are awesome because I have never watched an hour-long podcast on Twitter before, and that is something amazing. So just share the episode there. We super appreciate it. Getting the word out about the show helps us a ton.
A ton,
All
a
right.
ton, a
Until
ton of
next
time.
time, I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param,
I'm Kristen Sowers, also known as Lost Spheres. Don't forget your screen protector on your printer.
and we'll see you all next time.